You're listening to the Navigating Leadership Podcast, a podcast where you get to sit in on conversations I'm blessed to have with leaders from around the country and right here at home. I'm Dave Freund, and welcome. This week, Marisa returns and turns the tables on me, questioning me on my recently concluded 6-month reflection time. Let's join the conversation and see what she might uncover. Marisa, how are you?
I'm excellent. How are you?
I'm terrific. Wow, we've got excellent and terrific. Man, we are a team today.
It's earlier in the morning, so I feel like we're full of hope for the day. It's sunny.
It's summer.
Yeah, it's well, it's my favorite time. I guess it's maybe your second favorite time of the year.
It is. It's I've actually, as I've gotten older, I've learned that I really love all the seasons.
Mm-hmm.
And rather than like anxiously looking forward to the next one, I'm just really enjoying the one I'm in. So I'm really enjoying the summer. My wife actually said to me yesterday, she said, I think we have enjoyed the pool more this year, or we've used it more than any other year since we had it put in.
Mm-hmm. I feel that way too about us.
Yeah. And for our listeners that haven't listened to the old the next page, that my wife and I during COVID decided to put an above ground pool in for our grandkids. Of course, mm-hmm. I think we're using it a lot, which is great, and they are too. And in fact, at some point today, if people hear some strange noises in the background, it could be that 3 of my grandkids are going to come over in a bit to go swimming. So.
Oh, that's so nice.
So we're turning the tables a little bit today, and you're going to kind of interview me.
Yeah. I was actually thinking about that last night when I was preparing for this, that I feel like we're actually going a little bit back to our roots with the next page, where we're actually going to talk a little bit about what you recently wrote about.
Right.
So the email and blog post that went live on July 10th is kind of prompted us to have this discussion, because it is one of my favorite things that we've done in the past. You regularly do a really great job of reflecting on you do a great job every week, every month, every quarter, annually, like just reflecting on your year, your quarter, whatever.
Right.
And so you just came back a couple weeks ago from your summer vacation where you did some reflection. And now that was a 6-month reflection period for you?
It was.
Okay.
Yeah, it was. I figured, if it was the last week of June, it makes sense that should be 6 months. Let's look at the last 6 months, mm-hmm. and let's see how it went. Now, when I wrote about the email that went out on the Wednesday of my break, of my vacation, which would have been that last Wednesday in June, I talked about a pause, mm-hmm. And why we need to take a pause. And really what pauses do, like the best speakers understand how to use silence or a pause to get people's attention. Mm-hmm. In music, we have a rest in a piece, and it causes us to wake up and say, oh, something's coming. So pauses are critical. I actually think that the best leaders have frequent pauses throughout the day to process what's happening, mm-hmm. so that they can leverage it the most. John Maxwell always says that, experience is not the best teacher, it's reflected experience that is. Mm-hmm. And so I wanted to take some time, and I thought, wow, this is great. I'm going to have a whole week, and I'm going to be able to just reflect on my 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
And then I forgot the fact that I was spending a week with my family, which includes 10 grandkids.
Yeah.
The youngest,
10
Henry
active
being 2.
Grandkids, right?
10 active, right. So Henry's 2, and he's amazing. Henry is 2 going on 12. He has a vocabulary that's incredible. Mm-hmm. And Silas is the oldest. Silas is 12, was 12 in February. So, mm-hmm. and it was constant activity, which was wonderful. It really was. I love to fish, and watching my grandkids sit around in the afternoon when the fishing's lousy and looking through tackle boxes and trading baits and things. It was just, It reminded me of my youth, which was awesome. So one of the things that I wrote about that came out this morning was that the type of pause determines the structure.
Mm-hmm.
So while it was really great in terms of recharging my energy, so to speak, and kind of forgetting about, operations and plants, and not that I ever forget about my coaching clients, but not focusing on what they might be going through in that day or that moment or prepping for a class. Mm-hmm. I was just enjoying time with my family, spending time with our boat, that type of thing. Now, what I realized was I couldn't reflect as much as I needed to, so I actually took time yesterday when I had time in my schedule to really do a deeper dive on some reflection. Mm-hmm. So that was kind of why it shifted.
Yeah.
So in the post that I sent you, was there anything that surprised you?
So I did want to ask, because I know you've been doing this same week in the summer with your family for many years now. Mm-hmm. This isn't the first time you've used it for reflection. Right?
It is the first time. It is the first time that I had specifically tried to do a 6-month reflection.
A 6-month, okay. Because I was kind of looking at it and thinking, what's changed beyond
right.
Beyond the kids getting older and so. No, not get it wrong, but I actually saw it differently. I noticed that you were allowing yourself and you were actually able to relax and enjoy time with your family versus doing the opposite, because you very well could have just said, sorry kids, this is my time. I'm going to lock myself in a room and do this while you go do the fishing and the exploring and the fun stuff. But instead, you, I think, prioritized correctly and thought to yourself, like, this is a once a summer opportunity. I can do my reflection next week.
Wow, that's a great insight.
So I looked at it as like that was a growth moment for you, where you took a step in a positive direction.
Well, I appreciate that. So what you actually just shared was why coaches or thinking partners are so critical, because I was still like, how did I mess this up? How did I not know that this would have been a problem? Now, one of the things is the reason why I desperately wanted to have a reflection time was because my 6 months were crazy, especially ending our fiscal year, which ended at the end of June. I was driving like crazy to get revenues in because we had kind of an unusual revenue year. Even though everybody, including you and our CFO and our CEO were saying, hey, don't worry about it, just relax, it's not me. Right. So I pushed really hard and I felt I needed the reflection. Okay. Well, that's a great point. Thank you.
Yeah. And so, yesterday you spent some time. Did you ask yourself the same questions that you tried to ask yourself but prior?
I did not.
Okay.
So I re-scripted my questions. So typically my reflection questions are these: what went well? What didn't go well? What did I learn? What will I change? What was the highlight of my day? That type of thing. And also every morning I say, how am I feeling right now? But I decided to change it up because I wanted to get something different out of it. I wanted something that was going to motivate me, energize me, and give me direction for the next 90 to 120 days.
Yeah.
So
that the list of questions that you shared with me, those were the second round of reflection questions.
The second round of reflection questions. Yeah. Yep. And if somebody wants to know what I talked about in my post, unless you think we need to talk about it, they can just read the email that came out or sign up for it. But
yeah, I'd like to jump into the questions that you reflected on yesterday while they're still fresh for you, right?
Yep.
So
go ahead.
Let's see. Do I want to go in order? I will. I feel like the order was intentional here. So what has given me the greatest joy? That was a new question for you, right?
It was, yes. Now, if we look at the way Maxwell teaches prioritization, it's required, return. I forgot the third R, but it's the one that speaks to your heart. Okay. and which is what gives me the greatest joy type of thing. So, and I think the reason why that was so important is, while I was on vacation, I turned 63. And I have a lot of people saying, well, are you retiring? Are you retiring? And, and I have some friends that are retiring and some that retired a while ago. And I thought, I don't want to retire. I would love to do what I'm doing till I'm 70 full time if I have the energy to do it. But for me to do that well, I have to realize that I'm making sure I'm doing things that give me joy. And so as I reflected on it, and I only gave you the questions, I didn't give you the answers, did I?
Right. Yeah, I only have the questions.
Cool. Okay. So the first thing that gives me the most joy right now, as I reflected on it, was spending time with my wife and my family. My wife Frida did retire last summer from her job at the school, and she did it so that she could help serve our family better, my parents and my grandkids. It means that has more time available, and I really love spending time with her and with the kids, the grandkids, kids and grandkids. So I have to make sure that as I look at the next 90 to 120 days, am I building into my calendar before I do anything else those times that I'm going to be spending with them? Because if we don't put it in first, everything else that's important will fill it up.
Yeah.
And so then the second thing that I felt brought me the greatest joy was seeing my clients and attendees in my classes finding breakthrough moments.
Yeah.
When nothing compares to when somebody says, they don't even have to say it, it's just all of a sudden you see their facial expressions change. Like just this past week, I was doing a 360 call for a company. And one of the people that I was interviewing had attended several of the classes that I've offered over the years. And this was his statement: when I leave your classes, I'm pumped up to be a better leader for my team.
Oh, wow.
And it was just like, and I remember, and if our listeners listen to my Don Yeager interview that I did, that was released 2 weeks ago, I asked Don a similar question, what energizes him, and what he said was that when he gets comments from people about how something he said or a book that he wrote stirred something in their life, he has a special file on his desktop, on his computer, where he puts those, because he goes, some days I just need to read those.
Yeah.
And that was one of these, and I haven't collected them. I've heard them, but I've never said, wow, that was, another moment for me that I just recalled was in one of my classes. I always ask, what do you hope to get out of this session? And it just is this intentionality piece, the law of attraction, whatever you want to call it. And one class last year, at the last session, there was a gentleman sitting in the way back of the room. It was supervisory leadership, so we'd been together for 5 weeks. And he never said anything. English was clearly a second language for him, came from what I think, Eastern Europe. By his accent. But I asked at the end of the class, what's your greatest takeaway from all 5 weeks? And he said this. And he raised his hand, and he hadn't said anything for 5 weeks. And he said, every week I came with a question. And every week you answered the question, but I never asked the question.
Wow.
And it was just like, yeah, that's the power of sharing this intentionality piece with people, so that they realize our answers are there. We just need to look for them. So when I get those moments, it's great. It brings me joy. The next note that I made here was, I really love training. Now, Randy, our boss, has asked me several times, what do you like best? Do you like training or do you like coaching? And I say, I like them both.
Yeah.
But what I love about the training is when I get to interact with the participants. When we can get into a dialogue. I love it when they question or challenge something and say, okay, let's talk about it. I made this note for myself too. My 360s are very enjoyable when I stay on track. And what I mean by that is right now I'm doing 360s for 2 divisions of a company I'm doing 360s for 4 people in one company and wrapping up 360s for 3 people in another company.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot of 360s.
Yes.
And when I stay on top of my calendar, I love it because I'm helping organizations and I know they're getting value out of it. When I get behind, I get really stressed. So my takeaway from that was I need to keep on tweaking my system. I'm getting better, but I need to get even better than better. And then my last note here on what gives me the greatest joy. Coaching is enjoyable when the person is focused on growing and when they find a breakthrough. But then I made a note, I need to get better at this. So that will come back in my 90-day plan. Because I felt that I don't think I'm a good enough coach yet to get more of my clients to that point. I have to figure out how to ask better questions. So you want me to go to the next one?
So the next question that I have was, what has helped you grow the most?
Yeah, so this one, when I was really honest with myself, I wrote down, truth be told, it's the challenges that have helped me grow the most. When I'm stuck on something, when I'm dealing with something I don't know how to do or I'm not happy with, when things don't go well, that's when I grow the most. And I think for me, it was a good way to turn what could be a negative emotion into a positive one. Because it's too easy to just say, oh my goodness, I can't believe we have to deal with this again.
Right.
Or I have to deal with this again. But hey, if I have to deal with something more than once, there's something I didn't learn the first time. Because I didn't make the change. So I'm looking at that as a real positive now. And then my second point that I put here was spending time with my coach, because I do have a coach that I typically meet with every other week, and people that are further down the leadership journey. You know, I need to make sure that I don't get stuck in I'm the trainer and forget that I'm also the student. So that was kind of and I'm really glad. In fact, I have a meeting with my coach today, and we actually coach each other. So that's why we meet every 2 weeks, every other week. And I look forward to it because I get so energized and I get clarity, and I just need to make sure that I keep investing in that relationship so that I can continue to grow. So those are the 2 things that I think help me grow the most. Embracing the fact that challenges are good. Notice I call them challenges and not problems. And spending time with my coach and people that are ahead of me. You know, you've heard me say it, if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room.
Yep.
So those are my answers to that one.
All right. So let's see. The next few questions I think are my favorite on the list. I should ask you this. What should you stop doing?
So this is going to be no surprise to you because it's something you've been telling me for the 8 years that you've known me, almost 9 years. I need to stop overbooking myself.
You don't say.
I pack my schedule with back-to-back appointments, and it only causes stress. Now, that's the selfish side. The other side is when I do that, I'm not able to give my clients and participants in classes the best version of me. So if I have to learn, and this was something that I learned at my very, very first Maxwell conference I ever went to back in August of 2014. Wow, so that's 10 years ago. I heard John say this, you need to say no to the good to make time for the best.
Yep.
And I remember it hit me so hard I texted it to my wife right away. And the sad part was she had been telling me that for years. I just needed some old guy with gray hair to tell me. So that's really the if I can be disciplined in that, and I hope you and all of our listeners hold me accountable on this. If I can be disciplined for the next 90 days, maybe let's say even 180 days, the balance of the year, it will actually become a new way of me working, which is going to help benefit everybody. And
do you have a strategy in place for how you will do this?
I'm still working through the strategy. I know that a lot of, I think, well, one of them is, and I wrote about it in the post, don't let the colors touch. So it's just a visual thing of making sure when I look at my calendar that they're not back to back. And I think I need to look and see in my Calendly app where people can schedule 360s with me. There is a way for me to build a buffer where people can't schedule back-to-back appointments. And I think that would be, so this is a good thing for you to hold me accountable for next month when we talk again and say, hey, how are you doing on that? But I'm still struggling on my strategy. And I'll talk to my coach about it today and see what he says, because he's going to get the list of all my answers to hold me accountable. The second thing that I put in here, I only had 2 of what do I need to stop doing. Stop trying to force classes that nobody wants. I'm always trying to
you
drive
didn't dance
revenue.
around that one at all.
Yeah, no, I mean, we have classes that are hard to sell, and our Marcom team is spending too much time on it. Our training coordinator is spending too much time on it. It's cluttering up our emails of our members, and it kind of gets into one of the things that I wrote on in my post, where sometimes doing less is actually more.
Yep.
I shared with you before we started recording what was driving my greatest revenue for my activities. And if we look at, if I look at the total of those 5 items compared to our total revenue, that's more than half of our net revenue is coming from 5 programs that I run. And some of those have great opportunity. And then if we look at the effort that it takes to market those things, well, if I'm looking at 2 of the 3, Marcom doesn't even have to get involved in, nor does our training coordinator. Well, that's crazy then, if I'd be spending everybody else's time on trying to eke out something that, and again, if our members need it, we're going to help you find it.
Oh, absolutely.
We're not going to say, we're just not going to do that training. But we're going to find training partners that can deliver it better, more cost effectively, and let us focus on what we do best. So that's kind of what that, stop forcing classes that nobody wants. So that's it on those 2.
Well, on the flip side, what should you start doing?
So this is going to be kind of redundant. Add space in between my meetings. When you go from meeting to meeting, you can't process the information. And then you get to the end of the day and you wonder, what just happened?
Yeah.
I spent all day in these meetings, and all of our members, please, if you're a senior leader in an organization, do not let your organization schedule back to back to back to back meetings. You're not getting the value from the meeting. I just can't say that enough. And so that's one of the things, is adding the space. The second thing that I put in here, and you're going to say, why wasn't this the first? Prioritizing time with my wife and my health. That should have been first, but I must have been coming from a back-to-back-to-back meeting mode that's got me onto adding space. So that was the second one. And you see, wait, that has nothing to do with your career. You're right, it doesn't. Well, the health does.
Well, I don't see it that way. I mean, I think it's not work Dave and home Dave. Like, you are Dave. And
right, exactly.
You bring your life goes with you everywhere, right? So
yeah.
If
and I always tell my clients, when things are good at home, things will be good at work. Because we think about the energy. When things are good at home, there's so much energy we can bring to life. Conversely, if there's issues, if there's struggles, if there's challenges, it sucks our life out of us. So, yeah. So I think, and I know my wife listens to the podcast, so Frida's going to probably be the one that's going to say, I wonder how much time he's prioritizing for me. But
yes, do you have a strategy?
Other than trying to put it in the calendar first, that's right now what I'm at.
Well, I think that's great. Get it in the calendar.
Yeah, is adding that first and sitting down with her and saying, okay, when can we? So we actually do. We've got a long weekend planned in August.
Nice.
And we need to continue to plan more of those throughout the balance of the year. And then the third one for what I need to start doing, I need to become more intentional again on my own personal growth. And what I'm going to do, and this gets into, I have some action items at the bottom that came out of this, but literally scheduling training time for myself on my calendar right after my family time. Because one of the things I found is that when I am taking in new content, my classes and my coaching sessions are more vibrant and alive. So I just, and I can tell people sense it. So that's the third piece there, what I'm going to start doing. Be more intentional in my personal growth. And the way I'm going to do it is to block out time for learning. And so I think the next time you and I talk, you should ask me how much time each week I've blocked out for that.
Sure.
That would be good.
I can do that. All right. And I think the last question, what area of growth should you focus on over the next 90 days?
So I am going to spend the vast majority of my learning time in the next 90 days on becoming a better coach.
Okay.
I think I'm okay, but I think I grew a lot at the beginning, and then I'm kind of riding the wave, so to speak. And I do pick up things here and there, but a couple years ago, Maxwell Leadership shifted from our coaching mentor was Christian Simpson in the past, and the last several years, it's been probably 3 or 4 years, it's been Valerie Burton. And Valerie has a completely different approach, and I've never gone through. I mean, I've listened to all of Valerie's programs, but I've never gone through her workshops that I have that are available to me on the online platform for Maxwell Leadership. So I'm committing to going through over the next 90 days all of Valerie's programs, all the coaching modules, because I just need to get better at coaching, because that's going to bring. If you think about, okay, what brings me the greatest joy when my coaching clients have breakthroughs. So if I want to get more joy, I got to be better at helping them find breakthroughs.
Well, and I think that your goals of things to start doing will also support your goal of being a stronger coach, because the things that you're looking to start doing really are about, kind of balancing your life and finding the right, harmony that you need between your family and your work, and that will support, how you show up for your clients.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So then some other things that I did, and we talked about it before we started recording is, because it's a business that I'm working on here, I identified my greatest revenue areas, what can drive revenue, because revenue is important. If you don't have revenue, you can't invest back into the organization. So I've identified my highest revenue areas, and then from those, which had growth opportunities. Some don't have growth opportunities. I think, and I don't mean that in a negative way, I think there's a limited capacity for a certain type of thing for me. And I think I've met that on one of our programs. But my coaching and my 360s, clearly there's opportunity, especially the 360s, tremendous opportunity for revenue growth. So I've identified 3 areas, and now I need to work on a plan of how are we going to get better in those areas. So from those areas there, I've developed some action items. And one of them is, and I touched on this in my post that I wrote, I want to develop why statements for the offerings that I bring to our members. And if I have why statements, like what, if they go through this program, how will they benefit from it? You know, what's the why behind why they should do it? And then also include testimonials of people that have been through it and how they, you know, I listened to one of our members. She oversees multiple plants for a large organization. And I listened to her describe to a new person she was introducing me to the value of my 360s. And when it was just the two of us, I said, hey, can you give me some of that in a testimonial? Because I've never heard you say that before. It was great.
Yeah.
And she said, well, she's a procrastinator, so I'm going to have to hold her accountable, and I will. But if we have those statements along with why would an organization do it, it's just going to be so much easier for our Marcom department to put their, you know, you guys do such great work, but I need to give you the tools. I need to give you the information. And something that I thought about. So last Saturday, I bought a pair of shoes, and I'm on my feet a lot, so my shoes have to be comfortable and good. I don't buy shoes for how they look. I buy shoes for, well, they got to look okay. They can't look like clown shoes, but they have to be comfortable. And so my wife had been telling me the longest time, you need to go to this shoe store, a shoe store that she loves, where she knows the guy, and I had bought some shoes there. He wasn't there. Then those shoes broke, and she goes, we need to take them back. I called, and I won't even mention his name. Well, I'll mention his name because he's not. But she says, Paul's there. You need to go and see Paul. So I went in, and sure enough, even though I had worn those shoes since March, he completely credited me the whole value of those shoes.
Wow.
And helped me find another pair. And he said to me, he goes, I don't sell anything. I help you figure out what you want, and I help you find it. And I thought, that's amazing. And that's why I spent more money on shoes with him than I ever thought I would, because he was helping me figure out what it was I needed, what it was I wanted, and he provided that for me. And I thought, that's really the why statement. I don't want to sell anybody on anything. I want to help them discover what it is they need, and help them find it. So that's the why statement in the testimonials. And my goal is to get that done, believe it or not, by the 26th of this month.
All right.
Now, we're recording this a week before it's released, so I got a little bit of time. But I'm going to be spending the week of the 22nd at a conference for my church, and I will have some alone time in the afternoon where I can kind of think about some of this stuff. So that's kind of why I want to get that done. And then I've also noted to develop a marketing thought behind the 360s. And that specifically will be done by the middle of August, the 15th. And when I say done, that's when I can share with you folks in Marcom what I'm thinking. And then schedule coaching training on my calendar. And that is going to happen before the end of this week.
So before this podcast even comes out.
Before this podcast comes out, it will be there on my calendar. So that's what came out of my 6-month reflections.
That's great.
What are your overall thoughts?
I mean, I feel like there were no big surprises for me.
Right.
I think there were a lot of common themes, which I think is great. That, you know, it's much better to have kind of this woven pattern of, okay, here's, you know, what I want to be doing, here's what I'm good at, here's what needs improvement, and not to, you know, you don't, ideally they should be similar in theme and, you know, not all over the place. So I'm glad that that's where you landed and that you're not kind of chasing all of these different things that are unrelated and might not necessarily support one another.
Right. Oh, and I love how you saw that, because that really wasn't, because for me, I hadn't thought into it long enough to see that. I was just kind of because I'm a matrix, go down the list kind of person. I'm not really good at like word pictures type of thing, you know, or maybe that's not the right word. What do they call those things? Those
word clouds?
Word clouds. I'm not good at word clouds. Because I think I'm too linear.
Mm-hmm.
So it helps me when somebody can say, hey, yeah, this does seem to weave together well.
Mm-hmm.
So now I just need to implement it.
That's all.
That's all. And I want everybody to know that I realize that the easy part is what I just did.
Mm-hmm.
The hard part is now following through. And that's the value of my coach and my accountability partners.
Mm-hmm.
So, awesome. Anything else you want to ask me?
I don't think so.
Okay, so maybe we should tell folks what the next podcast is about.
You should tell me.
So my next podcast, because you and I only meet once a month, so our in-between podcast, I'm going to be interviewing our CEO, Randy Wolken, who really has his pulse on manufacturing, and has some pretty exciting things that he's been talking about, and I think a lot of that our listeners could benefit from. And also, so when and this is really the beginning of me interviewing leaders. Yeah. The other interviews that I've done have been authors. And I'm going to be asking Randy some questions like, hey, Randy, how has failure shaped your life? What are you learning right now? How do you stay growing? Those kind of things. So those are also be things that we're going to be getting from our off-week podcasts.
Is this Randy's first time, or was he on our previous podcast once before?
I interviewed Randy once during one of your maternity leaves,
okay.
But I interviewed him on his book.
Okay.
So I asked, because he had written the book, and I had asked him. So I interviewed him on his book. But this is really the first time that I've interviewed Randy just on Randy. So I'm excited.
Oh, cool.
Yep. Do you have anything exciting planned in the next couple of weeks or month?
I'm just kind of having fun. I don't know. I'm just
good.
The kids are at really fun ages right now, and
yes, they are.
We've just like I said, we've been really enjoying the weather, and it's just nice to have special time with them. So really, whatever they're up for, because I know it won't last forever. That they want to play games or go to mini golf or whatever. So I'm trying to say yes as much as I can.
Good. That's awesome. That's what you need to do. And I will tell you this too, that enjoy the time, make the most of it. But I'm also finding out how much fun it is to be empty nesters too.
Yeah.
And I don't mean that like we loved our kids. We loved having our kids around. But if we want to do something, we do it.
Yeah.
If we say, let's not cook dinner, let's go out, we go out. If we want to eat early, we eat early. If we want to eat late, it's nice. And we still can have the kids around, but then they
go home.
So, great. So with that, I'm Dave Freund.
I'm Marisa Norcross.
And this was the Navigating Leadership Podcast. What a great conversation. I love how Marisa got me to think differently about what I had perceived as a negative and showed me that I had actually grown personally. A great example of the need for a thinking partner or coach. Thank you for listening to the Navigating Leadership Podcast, and I look forward to you joining me in 2 weeks when I am privileged to have a conversation with MACNY's president and CEO, Randy Wolken. I'll see you then.